Welcome to the show, Brad Axelrad. What a fucking cool name. It was a hell yes for me whenever your name came through and just your message on facing your dragons, here on the Elevated Life, overcoming your fears, elevating your mindset, and really stepping into your full potential and power is the basis of why we started sharing this message. And it seems so aligned with what you're doing in the world. So we're just so excited to have you here, Brad.
Super happy to be here, and anyone that swears first thing on a podcast or any other time is a dear soul, kindred spirit. So
you can't trust people that don't cuss, okay?
That's what I say too. I'm with you.
Oh, Brad, well, you have done some incredible work over the last 10 years helping coaches and consultants. You've had this incredible podcast where you're bringing on all of our favorite people, including Miss Allie Brown. When I saw that, I was like, okay, we're friends. Let's go. So, Brad, can you just dive in and share just like a quick high level, who the hell are you? Why do you do what you do? And then we'll dive into the details later.
Geez, what's going to come out of my mouth right now? That's the question.
Let it flow.
Well, I think what's most exciting recently is revisiting psychedelic plant medicine and exploring the realms that are all around us, that are the most beautiful, majestic, godlike spaces for us to explore. So starting from that big frame or that huge, beautiful essence of all of us and all that is, we can maybe take it down a little bit and say that business can blossom from that space and it can come in from in and out. It's just this beautiful sort of synergistic experience of exploring all that is, all that we are, and figuring out how to use that and play with that energy into our lives. So that came up first, but yeah, go for it.
What psychedelics? What psychedelics are you most into?
I think when I'm speaking from that place, it's 5-MeO DMT. That's probably the most, yeah.
Yeah. It was, how many years ago has it been now?
I think it was 2011. Mushrooms kickstarted this whole journey. So I love that's where you started with it.
Had it not been for mushrooms, I mean, it was weird. It was the mushroom experience was the most profound, I would call it, religious or spiritual experience I've ever had. And I grew up with parents in the church, and I had my grandmother was Assembly of God, where they speak in tongues, they run down doing all the wild stuff. They bring the snakes on stage, and nothing compared to that first mushroom trip. I mean, nothing, not even remotely close. And I'll tell you, the big epiphany for me was that I realized that I was spending too much time hating life, and I didn't know that. I didn't realize I was angry at all. I had no idea, because I was successful. And so because of the success, that kind of blinded me to what I was actually feeling inside. And it was amazing, because on that mushroom trip, how much love I felt. I cried. I was a big boy back then. I was a big old muscular, 275-pound, just built like a brick house. And Britt asked me, she goes, "Why are you so big?" She on the mushroom trip, she just asked me questions the whole time. "Why are you so big? Why do we do this? Why do we do that? Why do we live this way? How come we don't have
why don't we smoke weed? What are we doing?"
It was everything.
Nice.
She asked me, "Why are you so big?" And I said, just bluntly, without even, there was no processing, no mental filter. It said, "So that no one could ever hurt me." And when I said that out loud, I was like, where the hell did that come from? And it was that spiritual experience, that psychedelic trip, that opened up my mind in so many ways and really just led us down the path. I love that you started with that. I mean, holy smokes.
Let's just jump right on in.
I'm a bit surprised that, well, I shouldn't be surprised, and neither should you, that when souls like us come together, we know what to bring up and out, right? But it's interesting. I can't say that in all the podcast interviews that I've done or interviews that I've been on, that I've started right away with that. That's not normally something that comes right out of my mouth. We would talk to see if that is off limits or if it's taboo to talk about things like that, but we went right in. So it's great.
Well, you're in the perfect place, because here on the Elevated Life, we dive deep into taboo topics that people shy away from. And I think it's so important to create radical change and transformation through tools that aren't really talked about, but are starting to come into the spotlight. So the fact that you brought up plant medicine, I think is, it needs its time to shine. I'll never forget about 10 years ago when we were just getting into this journey, I asked Chris, well, what's next? Like, what's next in culture? Like, what should we be on the lookout for? And he said, yoga and meditation. And then a few years ago, I asked, what's next? He's an Aquarian. So I'm like, you know, all the things, what's next? And he said, mushrooms. So I'm curious what's next, because here we are having the mushroom conversation in just casual, whatever. And I think it's important for you as well, Brad, to just fucking speak your truth. And I think that's why your soul recognized that you're in a safe space to talk about the things that truly light you up and bring you joy.
I just want to say fuck. Sorry.
Sorry, my grandpa was a Navy sailor. It's built in. It's built in.
Never felt the space safe enough to just do that. So thank you.
Hell yeah.
But in all seriousness, you know, and it's important to be playful. I think I want to name that right now, because the power of having this wide range of allowing all of our experiences to be, and embracing them and looking into them and facing them and embodying them, right? There's this full range or spectrum of possibility. And unfortunately, I just did a post about this because I've been revisiting the, oh gosh, what's the name of it? Going Clear, the movie on Scientology on HBO. And it just came up in a men's circle I was in. And but the prison of belief is what I just did a post about 2 days ago. And the reason I'm saying this, it's like there's this whole spectrum for us to tap into. But as soon as we get really stuck in our beliefs, we're only looking at this small aspect. And if we're not being playful and having fun and being serious and being intellectual, it's like we've got this whole spectrum we should play with. Unfortunately, many of us get stuck in dogma. We get stuck in our own intellect. We're not allowing the full expansion or the greater expansion of who we are.
If you think about the word belief, it literally has the word lie written in the middle of it. So I think we can't trust those.
Nice. I like that.
So tell us a little bit about where you came from, where you're going, how'd you get into the work that you're doing? Because usually, you know, you either take mushrooms or you have a lot of trauma in your life that causes you to change. So what was your journey and how did you come to this place to help serve and support this community?
Yeah, the short answer is pain. Anytime somebody asks that, it's truly that. And it's not like I had a horrible childhood, but we all had a fucking childhood, all of us, and it had things. So I love my parents, I love my family, I love my community, and to get really like serious for a minute, we're all carrying it. Even as I'm tuning back into it, it's like I'm feeling this sadness for the pain I experienced. I don't have it so much now, but maybe I wouldn't feel it if it wasn't really still there. But that the possibility that comes from that trauma is this great work in our world. And that's what I like to say. It's like we can transform our fear into our great work in the world. So it started for me kind of at racing motocross. I was almost a professional motocross racer. I was facing fear most of my childhood, doing everything I possibly could for adrenaline, for excitement, to push the edge. As David Data talks about, it's like the masculine is most fully alive at their edge, right? So it's like I've been living that for 40 years. And motocross led into more self-indulgence. Self-indulgence stopped working. It's like, how can I can't keep indulging anymore. Drugs, women, travel, money, success, all the fixings of what we think being fully alive is. And that wasn't serving anymore. So I had this sort of feather tickling, and maybe you guys have heard this. The feather was tickling, you ignore the feather long enough, a brick hits you upside the head. You ignore the brick, a Mack truck takes you out. And that Mack truck, in all of my asking, was my father passing in 2005. So the self-indulgence leading up to my father's passing and needing that defining moment to really open me up to wanting to be a vessel of service to humanity. It's literally it's like, I'm here, use me. There's nothing left but to use me to be in contribution at this point. So that was the genesis, and the defining moment was my father's passing. I want to share this last piece. I went to Tony Robbins in 2000. I thought, this is fun. We're sober, we're dancing. What's this high energy? Really amazing, but that wasn't really my fit. What was the deeper fit was the Hoffman process, or the Hoffman Institute. Maybe you guys have heard of that. But in 2003, I went and did the Hoffman process, and my life was changed at that point. That was opening me up to really being a spiritual being, understanding what it was like to remove the layers of pain and trauma and programming and conditioning and domestication to feel fully alive and fully free. And then I went back in 2005 to only have my father pass 36 hours before the second edition, which is called Q2, to be at the Hoffman process, 36 hours watching my dad take his last breath. And it just aligned that way. It was all divine. We didn't plan that. I just happened to register months before my dad died. And the work was so profound that I wanted to keep it in my life. So I raised my hand to become the Orange County, California graduate facilitator. So I was this facilitator leader for a couple years. And that was the beginning of my transformation event production. I can share more, but that was really the genesis.
You know, this is such a beautiful topic, especially as a guy, because so often we push anything away. You know, and almost like the spiritual journey seems so far distant. That's only what people did forever ago. That's only for monks, or that's only for a specific person. And I'm not one of those people. I think as a man, and you mentioned, if you're a guy listening to this and you have not read this book yet, David Deida, The Way of the Superior Man, is probably by far the best book as a man on life, how to deal with work, how to deal with women, how to deal with success, how to deal with all those kind of emotions that we all have. It's probably one of the best and most profound books that even exists out there. Any kind of client I get that's a guy, I send him that book. It's just automatically, you sign up with me, you're getting that book coming in the mail. It's just gonna be the way that happens. And it's interesting because almost always it feels like it's trauma that always propels us forward. Yeah, I know we resist it, and there's so many things in life that suck. I mean, losing somebody sucks. No matter, even if you had a shitty relationship with them, it still sucks when that loss happens. And it's so amazing to me, the amount of growth that almost always comes out of it if you allow yourself. Now, if you do chase the alcohol, if you do chase the other things, all you're really doing is delaying the spiritual growth. I mean, you're saying like, I feel pain, I'm gonna discount that, I'm gonna go out this way and ignore it. But the second that you hop on that spiritual path, what you realize is that all that pain that you feel inside allows you to connect with other people, because we all experience the same pains. And the second you start saying that in your words, you start opening up your heart, especially as a guy. For one, women come flocking to you. I will tell you that the more open and vulnerable that I am in front of women,
Don't do that.
It would be like the sexiest thing that I could ever do. I could have a ripped body, which I have had in the past, and women, other guys like that, which is the weird thing. You know, it's like, hey man, look at your body. Only guys commented on my body. But the second that you open up and maybe you cry in front of somebody, or you just come out and be like, man, I've been down a little bit, but I figured out how to come up. People are just like, they tune in because they go, oh, I hear truth. That truth starts coming through and they say, damn, I resonate with that. And then you start to inspire them from the pain that you just survived through. And I feel like that's such an important message, especially for men to hear, is that you don't have to push it away. All that kind of pain that you feel, for one, can spark careers. I know it sparked ours. It can spark really good, deep relationships. What you realize when you start getting on that vulnerable journey is that that's what people really want to talk about. That's the shit that's the real friend. It's not just like, hey, what do you like to eat? What's your favorite color? All that's kind of nonsense.
Can you imagine a podcast of like, what's your favorite color? Like, nobody wants to listen to that.
It'd be boring as hell. It's one of those stories like, where did your just gut rip open? You thought, I'm not even going to survive this, but then you do. Because the second that happens, suddenly you've opened yourself up to a new piece of life, and you're able to communicate with people and to commune with people and to love them in a different way. It's so beautiful that you mentioned any of that.
Yeah, you change for one of two reasons. You suffer enough or you learn new information. And I feel like you nailed it on the head, because anytime someone asks, how'd you get psychic abilities? Pain and trauma. Hello. Like I think it's the number one cause and catalyst to create that transformation. It's what you do with it. Will you turn your fear into fuel, or will you let it hold you back? And I know that's a big part of your message. Now, before we dive into the 5 dragons, because I'd love for you to share with our audience your framework on facing your fear. Right before we got on the podcast, I said to Chris, I wonder what dead person wants to come through for him, because I am a medium, and anytime we interview people that we don't really know, they usually come with a friend. So I'm not surprised to hear that your dad was also the catalyst, because my biological dad and stepdad both passed in the last few years. And that's what sent me on my psychic journey of communicating with the other side. Yeah, crazy. So, okay, let's take it back. You were already on a journey of change and transformation if you were heading into the Hoffman process. And it's so funny that your soul must have, I mean, obviously knew that you needed that to keep that journey going. But it wasn't your father's passing that said, hey, I'm going to go do this change or transformation. What before that led you onto that journey?
I love it. You guys want to go deep. This is great. So again, the short answer is pain, but that pain would show up as anger, as frustration, as just, you know, I love Gay Hendricks so much, and Gay's work is some of my favorite work on the planet. I'm talking about the upper limit. You know, he was podcast number 2 on the Face Dragon podcast. And I've known Gay for years, but, you know, he talks about how we hit our upper limit. It's really like we'll create problems in relationship, our physical health, or our financial health. And I was, you know, I was doing all those. I'm like, God, I'm building all this wealth, all this stuff's happening. And then I would fuck it all up. And then I'm building great relationship with somebody or many people or a business situation and screw it up. So it was just, there was a lot of sabotage there, I think is the easiest way to describe it. It's like I'd get so much momentum going and just totally screw it up somehow. And, you know, there's a process in Hoffman, I don't want to give it away, but there's times in there where you're facing yourself and you're understanding and pattern tracing back to where you learned all these behaviors. And, you know, and I could see perfectly like pattern trace that right back to dad. That's what dad would do. And we're either modeling or rebelling these behaviors. And, you know, and I just watched myself being my dad and watched myself being my mom, or the opposite that they talk about at the Hoffman Institute. You're modeling or rebelling them. So I would either rebel against it and be like, my parents are so fucking afraid. I'm not going to live my life afraid. I'm this entrepreneur guy skiing bumps 50 days a year, racing motocross and doing all these extreme sports things. I'm not afraid of death. Let me show you, mom and dad. Ultimately putting myself in harm's way at some level. So we're constantly doing this to either get validation from mom or dad. It all comes from mom and dad, guys, or surrogate parents, whoever. We know that. You guys know that. Most people watching this probably get that. That's where we got to look.
It's so true. You know, I love that you talk about how you either are just like them or you do the exact opposite. And I think there's so much healing in recognizing and breaking those habitual patterns.
Yeah, it's interesting because professionally, I'm a hypnotist. So I deal with regressing people all the time. And it is very phenomenal to regress people to really young ages. And suddenly they're back at 4 or 5 and dad or mom is saying something to them that gets cemented in the subconscious mind. And suddenly they're playing it out, even though they're 40 and 50, they don't even believe those things. They know those things are crazy or childish, or they only made sense as a kid, but now they're adults and they can't help but do it. But it's like, once you have the awareness, once you see the pattern and you go, oh my gosh, I've been doing that. It's like I was saying before, like I didn't even know that I didn't like myself or didn't like life. I had no clue because I was just living. I was just like, oh, this is the way everybody feels. Yeah, I'm sure everybody feels the same way. And then suddenly I was like, holy crap, I'd learned that. That was a learned behavior. I'd been around people who were negative about life, who even when they were successful, and I'm talking about knocking it out of the park successful, you know, where you've got the limo sitting outside, when you own small private planes and things like that, but you don't love yourself. And it's like there's this other level of fulfillment that a lot of us get duped out of because we get so sold on the schooling. We could go to college, get a job, have a career, have a wife, have kids, all this, which are all okay things, but you just miss out on the nectar of life. And I think so much of that is replaying those patterns and then asking yourself, what steps do I need to take to overcome these? Because how can I live my life in a way that fulfills me instead of maybe what my parents did?
People pleasing.
Yeah, because when you watch them, and especially as an adult, and you can have that sort of like the adult mind. I love the adult mind because it goes, oh man, that's really stupid. Maybe I shouldn't do that anymore. You know, like you start to have that playfulness with you and you kind of laugh about it. Like, I've been doing that for years. Like, what the hell? My best thing whenever I do hypnosis with a client, to watch them come out of it laughing. And I'm always like, well, what are you laughing about? And they're like, I can't believe I did that for so long. Like, what was I even thinking? Like, I know so much better than that. I know that I don't have to do these things. I can be more loving. I don't have to be a dick to my spouse. You know, it's just, you kind of start to clue in on like, man, we are all just, like you mentioned, modelers. We're all just modeling behavior. That's why it's so important to surround yourself with great people. I mean, the more often you're around great people, you'll pick up their habits. And whether that be physical fitness, whether that be the financial mind or spiritual exploration when it comes to plant medicine. You know, I've got one of those friends that every time I talk to him, he's like, hey, I'm going out and doing ayahuasca in Peru, or hey, I'm looking at 5-MeO-DMT, or hey, I'm doing bufo right now. What do you think about this? It's just that we dive in these deep conversations. And what I notice is that the more often that I let myself do those same kind of things, the more of those people I attract into my experience that are almost always have that next lesson that I need to learn and sort of show me a little bit more on the path. And it's so beautiful because you seem to sync up with the world. You kind of sync up with nature and you sync up with the flow. And before that, it seems like I'm just slamming my head against the wall, trying to be more successful, trying to do more things, trying to live this ambitious life, when really all I want to do is hang out with my friends and have a fantastic time. Like, that's really where life is at.
Well, you're spot on there. Yeah, go ahead, love, if you want to say something.
No, go ahead.
I'm just resonating with so much of what you guys are sharing and really feeling into it. And I'm finding myself kind of drifting into the conversation so much as wanting to respond. So it feels really good to be in the convo.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. It feels so good to connect with like-minded souls who are out there doing great work. And you, my friend, are doing that. You've spoken on over 300 stages, empowering and inspiring other people, sharing what I would assume is your 5 dragons. Yeah.
Well, that came up about eight years ago. Mm-hmm. But I want to share sort of how the event started. So we're producing the Hoffman graduate gatherings, and it was an amazing conversation about your spiritual self, physical, emotional, and intellectual self, and really the pattern tracing and the family constellation work, this beautiful, brilliant conversation and transformational experience. But back then, What the Bleep came out. What the Bleep do we know? The Secret, Ask It and Is Given, all these other things started really surfacing and getting really mainstream. So I wanted to start talking about those conversations, those topics. And so I started posting meetings about Ask and It Is Given and The Secret and quantum physics. And so we started talking about that. And within 8 weeks, it just blew up. We had NBC Nightly News out filming us, PBS television, in front of 8 million people, USC News, LA Times, Orange County Register. Like, I was just on this media train and caught fire when I was begging the universe to have my purpose show up so that I could be used. I was ready, and yet grieving horribly, but fully ready. So I'm standing, the events just kept growing bigger, 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 produced over 200 live events. But the point is, my calling showed up, my dharma showed up, my purpose showed up from the asking, and we were studying Ask and It Is Given. And the biggest takeaway from that was to not make it about me. It was like, how can I be of service? I don't want to charge for these. How can I truly be in service? And humility and gratitude were two of the biggest things that anytime all this stuff was happening, I'm just in reverence for the divine and thankful and grateful and humble. It wasn't about me. It wasn't, look how cool I am. I'm attracting this media. Look at these big speakers I'm putting on my stage. All that's bullshit. The deeper, more meaningful thing is, how can I be of service and use what's showing up to serve others? And that was the big shift that happened through the grief, through the calling in something deeper than the self-indulgence. I couldn't chase the dragon anymore. I had started facing my dragon. You can only freaking get high so much or ride a dirt bike so much or whatever it is. And that's what started the events. So the events morphed into coaching, consulting, podcast production. Been a founding member of the Association of Transformational Leaders with people like Ariel Ford, Don Miguel Ruiz, really amazing people, Jack Canfield. And that's been 15 years of circling with all those people and just working with them, creating transformation with them. It's been quite a journey. But through all of that journey, the Face Your Dragon message, I thought, how do I come up with my core message? And that was really where it surfaced. So I can stop there. I can keep going. It's up to you guys.
No, tell us.
I would love for you to share those dragons, because I think this is we all struggle with. We all go through these experiences that can hold us back or create courage. And I think with the awareness, you can't help but change. So yes, please
Okay,
dive.
cool. So everything that I just shared, I mostly shared that to say this. I was scared shitless as I was standing on stage. Like, who am I to be on stage? NBC Nightly News filming us. What the heck? Who am I to be invited into the Association of Transformational Leaders by Maury Smith and all these big name speakers to be a part of this community of the elite of thought leaders? Like, wow. Okay. So the first dragon that was constantly there that was coming up was the imposter dragon. So I'm going to be found out as an imposter fraud. Someone in this group is going to know that I'm not as smart as I am, as good as I am, as whatever it is. We all have that story and that narrative running, right? So I'll go through all 5 real quickly though. But imposter, scarcity, value, unheard, and critics. So I still navigate these. My greatest fucking fear is the fear of public speaking. It's the #1 fear on the planet above dying.
He knows.
Okay, I still have it. I'm nervous now, but I'm using my nervous excitement just like I did on the start straight with 39 other bloodthirsty competitors on the motocross start. It's like there's great power in this energy, right? So my imposter, there's chemicals surging through our body, adrenaline, all these other things we get to use. So we want to use our fear. We want to leverage our fear. We don't want to shy away from it. We want to lean into it and breathe. We forget to breathe. Fear is excitement without the breath. We got to fucking breathe. Like, let's take a breath right now. Let's breathe in. It's like we forget to do that. So all the dragons. So scarcity is the second one. If I build this, nobody's going to buy from me. What if I start the coaching business, the consulting business, event production business, the entrepreneurship, whatever you're doing, entrepreneurial endeavor, whatever it is, no one's going to buy. I'm going to be in scarcity. So that's the second one. So basically what happens is we're navigating in and out of all these, and we lean into fear, we face it, and some of us will retract, we'll use drugs, we'll be addicted, distracted, dopamine, social media, drugs, alcohol, plant medicine, whatever you use to distract yourself from feeling these feelings and using them to your advantage. So we really want to check in with where you're feeling like an imposter, where you're having scarcity. And then value is the third one. So do you charge what you're worth? Do you sometimes offer discounts you shouldn't? Do you stand in your personal value and just know that you're valuable because you're a divine creation of something that created us? Some call it God. Do you value yourself? Do you have self-love? Do you charge what you're worth? It's like this big, self-love, self-worth value piece. The fourth is unheard. We all want to be heard. We all want to experience being heard. We want to know that when we share something, it's going to land, but it might not, right? So we might not feel heard in relationship or in business. And it's important that people use active listening, but that may not happen. We may be sharing something and not have the opportunity for feedback immediately. It's like we've got to have that self-love enough to be able to share our message, to know that our message matters, to know that we're going to be heard. And the last is critics. Again, all these kind of weave together. If we're out sharing a message, people are going to criticize us. But there's something deeper than that. If I actually share this message, I might become so successful, like you were saying, that my personal life might suffer, or I'll be criticized for being successful. So it's sort of the fear of success. Instead of the fear of failure, there's this giant fear of success thing that many of us carry. It's like, who am I to become this great? I think of Marianne Williamson. Who am I to shine this light and to live this divine creation of who I am? People aren't going to love me at some level. So then I retract, I shrink, I distract, I'm addicted. So that's them in a nutshell.
I love that so much. And speaking of Marianne, she also says, you know, our greatest fear is not that we're inadequate, but that we're powerful beyond measure. And I think that's what the fear is trying to hide, is our natural innate power. And I love that you talked about fear is excitement without the breath, because I was just thinking about the time that we competed in as CrossFit competitors. And I had that feeling of like nervousness. I'm peeing on myself. Oh my God, my whole body's just shaking and sweating. And I looked at Chris and I was like, help, help, I need help. And he goes, babe, just breathe. It's excitement. This is what you were made to do. You're here for this reason. You prepared, you trained for that. And I think the same is true with all things in our life, and the journey that we're on is that every experience has brought us to this place that we are prepared and ready for what's to come. And when you start to develop a faith mentality, the fear just gets put to the back seat, because she's going to show up no matter what. It's just a matter of what you do with it, and do you use it as fuel? So as you talk about these 5 dragons and how they still come up today, what's like the number one tool, maybe breathing, but what's the number one tool that you use to dive into it so that you're not distracting or, running away from these feelings or these fears?
You nailed it. So it's awareness first, like you'd said, Chris, and then it's slowing down enough to actually sit with it and be with it. We don't want to shy away from it. Like you said, temporary fixes of drugs, alcohol, just sort of self-medication. We're always medicating ourselves at some level, or seeking some chemical response. We're addicted to these situations that create biochemicals for us at some level. So, but we can use that to our advantage and notice that if we can slow down and say, wow, that's just a little bit of excitement, a little bit of adrenaline, that's okay. Okay, no worries. Let me just feel it. Let me witness it, and let me love it. And that's really the big key, is to love your fear. We want to experience it as something, as a gift, and not as this thing we should be afraid of. Like, oh no, here it comes again. No, it's like, oh good, here it comes again. That's the difference. It's a matter of reframing it so that we can embrace the experience, embrace the emotion, embrace the biochemicals, and really just be with them. Of course, there's other things we can do. Listen, meditation's powerful, plant medicine's powerful. All these things are really powerful. But in the moment, it's about breathing, it's about facing it, it's about witnessing it, and about loving it. That's the key.
I love that you call it dragons, because we don't typically think of sitting down and enjoying our dragons in the same way we don't think about sitting down and enjoying our fears or our demons or the shadow side of ourselves. But what I've noticed so much is that if you will just in your mind pull up a chair and set that fear or set that demon or whatever's holding you back, whatever it is, if you'll set that down there and say, hey, man, I think we should be friends. You're going to be here, obviously, in my life, probably for the whole rest of my life. What do you think if we just hang out together for a little bit and just introduce me to your ways? Show me how I can use you. Show me how you can support this dream of mine. Because what you notice is that all this stuff is totally natural. Our brain is always trying to protect us. So all these things are protection mechanisms that are built in. We all have these. What's amazing to me too, I had an early on mentor, was a super cool guy, very, very wealthy, very savvy and everything. And I was talking to him about similar things. I was telling him about the kind of fears that I had coming up and how I was feeling. And I said, do you feel these? And he goes, not really. And I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, I'm too stupid to feel those things. He goes, I'm not smart enough. He goes, I don't even know how people feel. I'm too dumb to even recognize how they're feeling. And I thought, that's some of the best advice I've ever had. He goes, you're too smart. You're thinking through things too much. He goes, just get out there and fucking do it. And it was just like one of the best. He goes, just be dumb for a minute. So a lot of times before I get up and speak or do anything, the first thing I think in my head, besides I like to take a couple deep breaths and everything, you can do all the little techniques. You can imagine the audience naked, do all those kind of things. But sometimes I just tell myself, get up there and be dumb. No one knows any better. Plus, you're the one on stage, and we talk about hypnosis and authority figures. They're already giving you all the grace in the world because you're the person on the stage. They're sitting there butting the seat. And so a lot of times, whatever comes out of your mouth, people are like, oh my God, it was so good. You can say basic shit they've already heard 400 times. They've read it in every self-help book. They've already seen it all. And people going, did you hear what he said? Like, yeah, we talked about it in the car. Oh, but the way he said it, though, it was so damn good. It just resonated so much. And so what's really cool is that there's always going to be a big portion of the audience that just goes, I love that guy. I just love it. And it doesn't matter if you get up there and fart or do cartwheels or anything. People are going to go, man, you're just up there being his true self. And people love that. You stammer. I get excited and mumble.
Oh my gosh, he talks at like 3 times speed when he gets pumped up. I'm like, slow down. People can't understand your language.
I get excited. And so I let it roll. And sometimes people go, I heard about half of what you said, but damn, that half that I heard was pretty good. It was pretty good. I was like, shit, you heard half of it. Not bad right there. And so huge. If you could just sometimes just get up there and be dumb. Just
nice.
Oh, you guys are thinking about me? I'm too dumb to even know it. Hell, I'm just up here doing my thing. It was such sage advice. And he would always just have those little like words of wisdom where you just think, damn, that was really profound. He just go, yeah, whatever. Let's just keep on going, man. Just dismissive. I love it.
I think of fear as a signpost. Like if fear shows up, you're headed in the right direction. Like you're headed outside your comfort zone, and that's where we need you to be. So I think fear can be absolute fuel. And I'm with him. I'm not dumb, but I'm just done with the fear. Like I've lived enough trauma and experience in my life. When you lose parents, when you go through hard things, like, okay, so what's the worst that's going to happen? Right? Like when you go through that, use that to develop your faith, to know that you've been through hard things, but you've always gotten yourself out of them. So I just use that knowledge of, what, shitty shit has happened, but I've always come out on top. So I use that trust to just bypass fear at this point.
Yeah. And I want to ask you too, since you've been around big leaders, and you're obviously one of them, what would you say to a person who sort of who says, I want to grow into that? I myself too want to be a leader. Someone who's saying, I would like to be a leader. Where do you steer them? How do you tell them, like, listen, here's maybe a little bit of a path that you can start on to start helping you get out there and help other people?
Yeah, it's typically, well, if they are experiencing hesitation, like exposure therapy is one of the biggest ways to face and break through anything and to learn to make friends with it, right? So if you're afraid of public speaking, let me back up before I even say that. One of the things I have a lot of my clients do is stop for 90 days. When I say stop, I mean stop sex, drugs, alcohol, social media, masturbation, whatever it is, whatever they use to distract themselves from feeling themselves fully, just fucking stop. And notice the energy between stimulus and response. Mind the gap, notice the gap, start getting familiar with that gap. So even as I'm stopping right now, we're noticing there's a different space, right? I've slowed down enough for us to feel that little gap. But doing that in all aspects of your life and cutting out and getting aware of all these elements and things that we do to distract ourselves, that's the first thing. But the second thing I really want to bring up that I know is super important, exposure therapy, and the way to become a better speaker and to break through that fear, because most of us have it, most of us get excited, is to slow down and use something that Lee Glickstein taught me. And it's called speaking circles, if you guys have ever heard of that. It's brilliant. But there's this slowing down aspect, and we're connecting with somebody down through our body, down into the ground, and down and up into them. And we're having a conversation with that one person. And we're slowing down to mind all of this space and presence, to deeply connect with that one person and to have a conversation with that one person. And the rest of the audience is watching in awe as you're having this deep, intimate, related experience, and you complete with that one person. And then you move to the next person, and you're rooting down, and you're breathing, and you're connecting with them again. And having that conversation, completing with them. It's this beautiful way to create deep, intimate connection in any experience. So that's 2 tips for you.
Yeah, I mean, exposure therapy, AKA fucking practice, man. Practice builds that proficiency, and the truth is we're always public speaking. Like when you're speaking and someone can hear you, it's in public. So I don't know why, like, as a hypnotist, that's the number one fear that he sees come up all the time, but we're always doing it. So I find that super fascinating that we can trick ourselves into that. But you tapped on something that reminded me of what I do with my clients behind the chair, or even coaching clients when I'm reading tarot or whatever, is I imagine their heart opening up. Like I cut down all the walls. I punch through all the bullshit that they've built up. And I imagine their heart chakra fully opening, and that my light and their light just like like freaking Avatar, like our tails plugged in together, you know? So I think as you talk about rooting down for yourself, I also like to root into the person that I'm with. So I think that's a great visual that you shared.
Yeah, I also want to ask you, so we've hosted a lot of events and they continuously get bigger and grow bigger and bigger. I want to ask you a question from this standpoint. How do you recover from events? When you give of yourself a shit ton, and when you're
Sorry,
out,
I gotta laugh. You're fucking smoked after events. Get over it. It's never gonna happen.
I can barely talk. I can barely think. I mean, a lot of times especially when we do retreats, and it's like a 5-7 day retreat, and people have opened their souls to us and said things they've never admitted to people in their lives, and you're kind of helping them work through that. The drain on the body is unbelievable. I'd say if I didn't know how to do we use hypnosis a lot just because that's what I'm used to using. And how much that can relax you is phenomenal. And what I've noticed with Britt is if we'll do a couple of those sessions, it's so much easier. But shit, it's a drain. I mean, I think a lot of people are really excited to get into a business like this. They're like, I want to help people. I'm really excited. I want to get a following, and I want to tell people to, inspire them, help them accomplish their dreams. They don't realize like it's a fucking beatdown. It is a absolute beatdown in every way. I mean, you have to keep yourself in good physical health. You've got to eat the good food. You got to drink the right water. You got to sleep the hours. You have to do all those things, or I promise when you show up, you suck.
Yeah, you're preparing your vessel to be a channel for massive amounts of energy, and it is a whip. So I'd love to know, like, obviously we know it's a whip, but what do you do to recover? Like, do you immediately turn around and you're booked on the next thing, or do you give yourself space? And what are those activities or rituals that you find yourself to recall and recharge?
I stopped doing events because of how brutal they are. I was doing so many hundreds, and I want to say this. I just started and sold my ownership interest in a biohacking community. So we'll talk a little bit about some biohacks, but and we were producing events, and I was so grateful to sell out of that and move to Mexico full time, and and to not be producing live events again. Excuse me, but most of what you're explaining is adrenal fatigue. So my first go-to is bone broth, vegetable juice, but massive adrenal support. Like mostly what you're saying is absolute adrenal exhaustion. And there's a supplement I've been taking for about 12 years from a gentleman named Dr. Nick Delgado. And it's Adrenal DMG by Delgado Protocol. You can find it on Amazon too. But when I moved to the mountains of Boulder, right before then, I was getting my place ready to rent. I owned a place for 12 years in Orange County, and I was getting it ready for rent so I could move to the mountains of Boulder and find myself and find my brand and my message. And that's where I came up with Face Your Dragon, doing tons of 5-MeO DMT and finding the message. But the point is, gut health. I thought I was dying right before I moved. I was having stomach problems. I felt super fatigued in the bed. I'm like, I either have cancer, AIDS, something. I'm fucking dying. Okay. I didn't know what it was. And I called Dr. Nick. I said, Nick, this is what's going on, man. I've been working really hard, pushing really hard. And he goes, it's probably just your adrenals, Brad. You've done drugs for all these years, alcohol, motocross, entrepreneurship. You've been pushing at the edge for 25, 30 years. Like you're tired, dude. Your adrenals are worn out. Within 2 days of taking these adrenal capsules, I felt like I was 19 again, and I had energy all day. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing, like I'd mentioned, bone broth. Third thing, cut out stimulants. You got to cut coffee. You got to cut coffee. You got to cut coffee. Okay? Get off of the freaking stimulant sauce. I don't care what Dave Asprey says about freaking butter and MCT oil and all that shit. It's all great, sure. It just sustains the stimulant for an extra couple hours. I think that is absolutely horrible. More supplements, more nutrients, less stimulants. That's what I like to say. So that's what I would do. Veggie juice, bone broth. I have an amazing smoothie in the morning that gives me tons of power. And then as soon as I get hungry, I have bone broth. Then I have a healthy lunch. And then as soon as I hit a little bog at like 3 or 4, green juice. That'll fire you up the rest of the day. So those are some tips. That and other things, hyperbaric chamber, stem cell. Like I just had 130 billion exosomes injected into an IV into my bloodstream. Like I could go on, but that's probably the most addictive thing that people are doing.
I mean, this is such an incredible conversation because I really feel like this is one of the pieces that no one talks about. No one talks about the recovery aspect. And to me, it's the most important because it only matters how long you can sustain, right? And you can go to any business, you can work really hard for any kind of period of time, but there's going to be a part where you hit a wall. I mean, and sometimes it happens quick, especially the people who burn the midnight candle all the time. And it starts to bleed into all your relationships start to suffer. Your sex drive starts to suffer. Your appetite goes down and you start hating life. I know when I hit it because I become that more anti-life. I'm not as pleased with people. I start notice more negative things, noticing people that cut me off on the road where normally I would never care. I'm like, hey, what? They probably have to go to the bathroom. I get it. You got to poop, man. Go for it. You know, like that's what I always picture. But when I'm in that drained mood, it's like, I'm mad at the slightest thing, which is unusual. And so to me, everybody, even if you're not a huge leader, I mean, everybody's a big leader, especially if you're a parent, especially if you have a spouse, you're always a leader. I mean, there's no way to get away from it. And you're always leading your own life. It's so important to tune into what in the hell are you doing for recovery? What are you doing that nourishes you? Because your body is meant to have certain things. And when we start running it really hard, it's just like anything. You run a car really hard, it breaks down. I mean, that car is just, I mean, you're going to lose something. And you watch the machines, you know, it's amazing what they can do and get out on the big races. You know, they have these cars that are 1,000 horsepower and they have all this kind of stuff in them. Those cars last one race. And then it's done. They get a whole new car after that. But as people, we try to do the exact same thing.
Do that.
I'm going to keep going. I'm going to do more stuff. And then suddenly you realize, but I'm not that car. Hell, I got to be with me in a year from now. And so like, it's so important to start building in those habits now, even if you don't have something big that's happening, even if you don't aspire to be a big leader on stage like that, no matter what you're doing, your body is breaking down all the time, especially the more that you stress it, the more that you use your brain to think through things, it's just taxing. And so it's so important to start having this conversation about, and I love the biohacking aspect because it's very important. And to your point too, the first thing I always try to do, get people off that caffeine. Caffeine is such a stimulant. And when it eventually just tears your nervous system apart, even if it's, you know, so many people are like, well, it's legal, so it's fine for me. You can get a lot of things that are legal. You can get a lot of things that are legal that will
like sugar.
That will fuck you up bad. Sugar's another one. I can't believe the amount of people who just get done with something and then just pound refined sugar, eat all that processed food. If you are doing a conference or a retreat like we are, we have a plant-based chef come in and prepare all the meals for everybody. Super, super nutrient rich, all that kind of stuff, because we know this program that we're doing, this 5 to 7 days retreat is just going to beat your mental ass. I mean, it just is. And if you're not empowering yourself with food, which is the basics of everything, if you're not empowering yourself with that food, you're not going to last. I mean, it's just going to happen.
The one I want to say, like I don't drink alcohol. Since 2007, I might have had 30 drinks. So that's another one. Most people are alcohol through the day. They have their wine to calm down at night, and then the coffee in the morning to freaking jack. They're just all over the place, spiking their hormones everywhere. So that's one I would really consider. Like Tony Robbins doesn't drink. Some of the most powerful, successful people I know that are fully like embodied in power. I don't mean like dominance. I mean like they're in their power. Like they don't drink. They're not drinking alcohol.
Yeah, because it's a depressant. It like lowers your energy, opens you up to like negative spirits. It's why it's called spirits, you know, liquor or whatever. I think that's so important because when you are putting external stimulants in your body to create energy, you cut off your natural ability to be a generator of this abundance of energy. You just have to give it the right environment. And when you're like doctoring it and like, here, like, let's just use this fake source of energy, then your body just shuts off and says, well, I don't have to do it. I get to be lazy because the body loves to be lazy.
Yeah. I want to mention one more thing since you brought up Tony Robbins and we're talking about biohacking, something that we've been doing, and it's only been recent. I don't know why it took me so many damn years to figure this out. The little mini trampolines, the rebounders, they call them. I will tell you, because that's apparently the best thing that you can use for your lymphatic system, period. It even beats out lymphatic massage, just jumping up and down on a silly small trampoline. But I will tell you how good you feel afterwards. You feel so alive. If we're going to go do something and I hop on there just for a minute, I'm not on there for 30 minutes or anything. It's not crazy. Just for a couple of minutes, you feel, I mean, the person, whoever you're going to be talking to, is going to feel your energy. You're going to be, damn, what is that person hyped up on? You're like, bouncing. I'm really hyped up on bouncing right now. I've been hopping around for a minute.
Oxygen and bouncing.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful thing. And all these things are complementary to our natural processes. The whole idea is to support what is already naturally there. I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah, this is alkaline water. I've been on alkaline water for about 14 years. Some people don't say it's good. I don't know. I feel much better on it.
Absolutely.
I think you just have to trust your own body. And that's ultimately kind of what started our journey. Is we were growing some pot plants and killed one of them. And Chris was like, how do we kill it? We got to fix it for next time. And we learned that the pH was off. And Chris just ding. Well, humans have a pH. Do you think that matters? Well, turns out it absolutely does. And so we went on this journey of, well, let's only eat and consume alkalizing foods. And at the time we were paleo CrossFitters. So we were like, what is alkalizing? And we pulled up a list, and it's all freaking plants. I'm like, I don't even know what an eggplant is. Like, how do you cut an avocado? Okay. I didn't know anything about this over 10 years ago. And we experimented for 1 month during CrossFit. Let's try this alkalizing food list and see if we can raise our pH so that disease, cancer, all the things can't grow in the body. And oh my God, the month was up. We were flying past people in the gym. We felt so pumped up, so oxygenated. We were like, oh my God, what drugs are we on? This is amazing. And we just never stopped. We never stopped. So alkalizing the body is absolutely important. And I think if the water works for you, if you feel good, you just have to trust your body. I think that's so important.
Yeah. The other thing I really want to know, so we talked about biohacking, we talked about where you came from, kind of how you got started. I really want to know, like, what's the future entail for you? What are you looking forward to now that you've done a lot of things and been a lot of places? Where's your like heart calling you to go? Like, where's that next place that you serve?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So as I'd mentioned, I'm here near Playa del Carmen, Mexico, in this really neat community, and dropping in deeper to domestic life. Just moved in with my girlfriend and really experiencing what that's like. It's been a while since I've lived with full time.
No sabotaging. No sabotaging.
Where I'm doing that, yikes! And it's been a beautiful blossoming for both of us as we both want to run or whatever. It's like just this thing. The fears come up in relationship, of course, and it's been such a great teacher, and I'm really grateful for that. So that feels like this sort of next evolution of building that deep, committed, intimate communion. And from that will blossom the desire for world travel together and experiencing digital nomad life together. So that's kind of the next evolution. And I've, for the last year and a half, been engineering Courage into Clients, which is my platform for teaching other leaders how to leverage their fear and build a business in a purposeful, freedom-based, digital nomad, kind of business. So, but I might launch the podcast again. I've got this small thought of, could I start interviewing all these fun celebrity thought leader friends of mine again and actually get back in these conversations? And I'm tempted. I'm not fully committed yet. But season 2 is lurking somewhere someday. So that's looming. But yeah, just
your first episode, season 2. Let's just put the pressure on. Okay.
I mean, I was so blessed to have my friend Miguel Ruiz of the 4 Agreements as guest number 1 on the podcast. And I meant to say this earlier. He talks about fear is completely normal. It's when it becomes irrational that it's a problem.
Oh, yeah.
And so if you want to listen to that, you can just go to faceyourdragonpodcast.com and you'll see all the people there. But I had JP Sears on there, all these really cool.
Funny.
I love JP.
He's a nut. I love JP. So just really cool people and great conversations around, all the stuff we like to talk about. It's really great.
I want to throw a suggestion in here for anybody listening, and that is that if you are not in a community like Brad's talking about here, if you're like, how do I ever meet these people? How do I get to know these people? The number one way that I recommend is go volunteer at their events.
That's
Go
good.
volunteer, go find some sort of charity that they're doing, or go find some kind of thing.
That's a Tim Ferriss move.
And you don't ask them for money. You don't ask them for, or like, hey, you know, I've got this thing, will you come help me with my stuff? All that, shut up about that. Everything is about, hey, I really love your message. I'm really enjoying what you're doing. What you've done has inspired me a lot. Is there some way that I can come help you? Is there some way that I can be of service? Can I introduce people to stuff that you're doing? What can I do to help you? Because a lot of times the real big people never get those messages. All they get is people, I want from you. I want to take, I want to use your thing to make my platform bigger. I want more people to see me and all that. I mean, it's bullshit. And all you have to do is ask them, how can I serve? Because that's how you make a real friendship, because you show the person, hey, I care. I'm interested in what you're doing. I want to support you. I want to support your business, your mission. There's so much power in letting people know that you'll be there if they need something extra. And it doesn't matter how big the person is. Everybody needs a little bit of extra help.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Another, if I may insert another tip around how to kind of celebritize yourself, and what I did is producing events. And like you said, it's from a place of everybody winning. It was how can I make sure that everybody wins in this room? It's not about me, it's about us. How can I be of service to everybody here so that we all get what we need? And that's why my events just kept growing and growing and growing, and people loved coming to them, is because they were all getting their needs met. And I was making sure that we all got our needs met there. And you're 100% right. It was being in service. And then I had a platform to bring people to come speak, and then they got to sell their product on my stage. I'd put 200-300 people in a room, and they'd come and sell, and sell $30,000. Like Marie Diamond from The Secret came and sold the shit out of the room. Like all these people were just selling to my audience, and just creating opportunity for everybody. So yeah.
I think that's such a great piece of advice, is hosting events to be in service of the community. Just last month, I was intuitively guided to create a summer solstice experience, a one-day women's wellness event. And I just kept saying the intention behind this is to shine a light on our community. And I just want our community to win. I don't want it to be about me speaking on stage or my message. I want it to be about all of us connected. And one of the vendors that joined the event, she's like 25 years old. I look over, we're burning the bullshit ritual, burning all the things we want to let go of in a bowl. I look over at the end of the day and she's bawling, tears just streaming. And I look over and say, honey, are you okay? What's going on? She said, I thought I came here to sell cookies, and I let go of my abuser that committed suicide last year. And I never thought that would be possible. So when your intention is pure to bring people together for the highest good of all involved, you just have to step out of your own way and trust the why that was the driving force behind it all. So many people in these, event creators or retreat hosts or this or that, like I think that sometimes when you have been on that hamster wheel for a long time of creation and trying to support, you forget the why, and it takes away from the magic. And like you talked about, bringing that community together for others to win and not you to win, when it's the we and not the me, so much more magic and abundance can flow through that catalyst, if you will.
Yeah. And even in relationships, I'm always trying to set Britt up to win. Like everything that we're doing
really well for you.
It works well, my needs are definitely met, it's just, but it's almost counterintuitive, but it's so smart to allow people to for one, to be right. Sometimes, we don't always have to all be right. It's definitely okay to say, I'm sorry. That's definitely a word that can come. Those are words that can come out of your mouth. It's fine.
You're so in relationship. You just say, you're right. And I'm sorry. Right. Brad, need to freaking say that, like, you're right, I'm sorry, like, of course.
Yeah. It's amazing how sometimes little words like that can have huge impact. I remember Britt, this was early in our relationship, and I was mad. Britt did something, I can't remember what it is now, but it was one of those moods, it's one of those triggers, and it sets you off, and I was in a fury, and I called her, and back then she was in beauty school, right? So I call her and I'm about to lay into her. As soon as she says something, I'm gonna tear her ass, and I get into it. I get like 4 words into it, and she just kind of interjects. She goes, "You know what? I'm really sorry." And my whole big ego balloon just went and just deflated. And I was like, "Well, hell, I don't know what to say now. I was really mad, but you came in with the I'm sorry." And she's like, "I'm so sorry. I won't ever do that again." And I was like, well, I'll see you later, babe. I love you. You want me to make some dinner for when you get home? It changes the whole dynamic. And sometimes a lot of us get too prideful and we forget. And it's so much easier just to be like, how is that other person feeling? Is there anything that I can say right now to just, just put them at ease? Because, you come in, everyone's going to face shit in their life. There's going to be down times. There's going to be bad stuff. There's going to be people that get triggered by stuff that doesn't matter to you. Sometimes Britt gets mad about stuff and I'm like, I don't even know what the hell she's talking about. And I'm just like, oh, babe, yeah, that's a big deal. What can I do to help you? Is there anything I can do to support? And it's boom. It's so easy. It's so easy. I'm not trying to run in there and be the white knight, but if I need to, hey, that's okay. So it's so important as we glue into our relationships, especially business relationships too, which is just like being in bed with somebody.
Just as intimate.
I mean, businesses, it's pulling on those purse strings is a lot. It's really important that you make everybody win. I love that you say that. It's so important about giving that person, like, give them the meatball, serve them that meatball, let them knock it out of the park a couple times. And what will happen when you do that is people start to trust you, because they know that you believe in them. Because a lot of people, even big people, even people who've been on stage a million times, sometimes they have these dragons too, and they're feeling that imposter. And as soon as you say, man, that was really beautiful what you did, I can't wait for us to come together and do that again next time, people go, oh shit, do you felt that way? Like, yeah, of course I did. That was a beautiful message that you shared, really open, really honest, and I loved it. It's amazing what you can do when you tell people how much you love and appreciate what they're doing. A lot of times we're forgetting to appreciate people. We get too locked in our own visions for our future. We get too locked into our own dreams. And suddenly we've just, let things take its course. And we've forgotten, hey, babe, you matter. It's so good to have you here with me. The appreciation part is just so dynamic.
Yeah, I think appreciation towards men specifically is what is lacking in a lot of relationships. And, one thing I always share is Chris drives me everywhere except the nail salon. And every time we sit in the car, thank you for driving, babe. Thank you for driving, babe. 17 years. Thank you for driving, babe. Every fucking day.
I like hearing it every time too. It never falls on deaf ears. I'm like, you're right.
Yeah, and I've had to set that boundary a couple times in many different types of relationships. Appreciation is everything. We're not here we're here to serve each other, but we should be serving each other.
Like reciprocity serving. Yeah. One thing that my dad said right before he passed, he said, babe, I just don't like being on the receiving end of things. I always want to be the giver. And I said, Dad, you're fucking up the cycle, because it's called give and receive. And when you're constantly giving and not opening up to receive all the giving that you're doing, then you start to resent the giving that you're doing. So I think it's so important to recognize, we all love to give. And just as much as we all love to give, we don't want to deny that by not receiving that gift from others.
Very true. I wish I could agree with you totally that all people like to give. Some people do like to take.
Well, I think in a deep soul, innate place, we all want to give. But when we're living in our ego and we're not aligned with our soul purpose and who we really are, then of course we got some energy vampires coming up,
Yeah, I've had a couple of those in my life. I'm grateful to see them sooner now.
Yeah, I feel like that's something too that also comes with this kind of a business. For the people out there in service-based industries, you are going to attract people who will bleed you dry. I mean, they will take all your time.
#boundaries.
They will take all of your energy, and you always know, because you feel drained afterward. You feel really drained, and it's not that you've done a 7-day retreat. You could have been around them 10 minutes and been like, fuck, I got to take a nap now. Like, holy smokes, I need to hit the joint a couple times. Like, what did you do to my brain? And I've got big boundaries, but some people, they're good at what they do. They're clever. They know how to move in and out of your psyche. And you're like, shit. But it's true. Once you start recognizing those people, you got to get them out of your life. I mean, you just absolutely have to punt and say, you're not coming back.
Yeah. And maybe they're giving you the courage to set boundaries. So maybe they are giving in their own fucked up way.
Those have been the greatest teachers of my life. Anyone that, the terms chucked around pretty flippantly now, the narcissism. Yeah, but there are a lot out there, unfortunately. Oh, yeah. And you're right. They're the best teachers I've ever experienced in my life. Nobody comes close to the amount of self-reflection and opportunity for growth than being abused narcissistically. It's a mother effort.
Yeah, I mean, one of our top podcasts that we ever did, I think it was the fourth one that we recorded a couple of years ago, was why empaths attract narcissists and how to break that cycle. And I think, it's so sad because it's like narcissists don't ever change, but I think you're right in that they develop the empath's ability to set boundaries and not be walked all over. And I think that's the biggest lesson for us.
Yeah,
To keep loving, but don't let them drain you.
And Brad,
sorry, I'm an empath and an HSP, highly sensitive person. That may have heard that term.
Absolutely. Hello.
Really feeling a lot. I'm really psychic, and I can kind of tell when they're full of shit. And it's like, but I'm caught. Here's the little tell. This is the tell, guys. Anytime I'm around somebody that ends up being a narcissist 6 months, 2 years, 5 years later, I'm like, oh my God. It's always retrospect that I've seen it and caught it. I am super high when I'm around them and completely enamored and caught up in this euphoric, energetic. I don't know if you guys can relate to this. I'm like high. So the vampire story is that the vampire is getting high off of sucking their energy, but also the person that's getting bit getting high too, right? You see it in the movies. And now I know it's like I'm so high, and it's only around a couple people, maybe 10 times in my life that I felt that. And always in retrospect, hindsight's 2020, I'm like, oh, they were just sucking my energy. But to your point, Chris, it's this strange, weird feeling of having your energy suck can do two things. It'll totally blow you out and drain you, or it'll get you high and euphoric. But in the end, it's totally draining in the end.
Yeah. Absolutely. Brad, I feel like I could probably talk to you for hours. I think we probably see a lot of life similarly. I'm very into like the body and biohacking and things like that. But I want to shine a spotlight on the things that you're doing. Where can people find you? Where can they get information about any kind of thing that you've got going on? Because I think a lot of people are going to resonate with this message, especially for guys, because I think it's so important for us as guys to tap into other spiritual guys, because it will open up a doorway into life that I just did not exist. Like, it was just, holy shit, there's that door right there. And I feel like you're one of those people. So where do people find out about you? Where do people get in touch? And if you're ever putting anything on, where would they find out about that?
Cool. The easiest place is faceyourdragon.com. That's where all the podcasts live. You can take the quiz there to discover the #1 hidden fear stopping you from earning what you're worth and to transform it. There's a great quiz that leads to a specific training focused on your hidden fear. You'll find it, learn to face it, learn to integrate it. And you can go directly there at couragequiz.com as well, but faceyourdragon.com embodies most of my life's work. And then, really considering having some kind of an event here in the Tulum, Playa del Carmen area that would bring amazing people together. It might be a plant medicine retreat that involves personal transformation and probably 5-MeO. So that's something I'm seriously considering doing now that I'll be down here a little bit more. But that's to be determined, and so is the podcast. Those two things are huge commitments, and I'm liking keeping things simple. So
I truly feel we're in that stage of simplicity, but if your soul is nudging you, then just set a date.
Yeah. And please tell us,
Yeah, let us know. We'll be there.
Yeah. I'm interested. I mean, Mexico for one, but 5-MeO, hey now, talking my language.
There's nothing more profound than that medicine. I've done a lot of things in my life and chased and faced many dragons, and it's just beautiful. It's the God molecule. NN-DMT that's in ayahuasca, which is this here, that's an ayahuasca vine, is beautiful medicine. NN-DMT is incredible. But 5-MeO is the God molecule. The NN is spirit, 5-MeO is God, and you just go straight to God.
I want to ask you about one more psychedelic since we have you right here, right now. You ever do salvia?
I oftentimes, if I'm serving 5-MeO, which I've served a lot, we'll put a little bit of salvia in there on the weed with the 5-MeO, and it's
hot. Damn, I'm coming to your retreats.
As my brother who showed me this path probably 10 or 12 years ago, he said that the salvia just colors it a little bit differently, but it's,
yeah.
It's intense. That's by itself is no joke. I've done it by itself, and it's really intense. I wouldn't recommend anyone do that by itself. It's super intense.
That was the first psychedelic we ever did about 7 years ago.
Well, it was legal. You could go pick it up at any kind of store back then.
Legal, yeah, it's still legal.
Yep. So we were like, what legal? We want to do drugs, but what legal drugs can we do? And salvia and dextromethorphan were the top 2 that were legal and available in Texas.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so that was our beginning journey.
I ripped my third eye open. Hello, not ready for that.
Yeah, salvia is definitely one of those things where you're just going, what? Like, and it's weird because here's the big deal about salvia is that anytime, and we've done it a significant amount of times. It's been years now, but we did it because that's all we knew. We didn't even know. I was in real estate for a long time, and I had a business partner back then. I was like, hey man, I'm gonna bring this salvia over. And I didn't smoke weed. I never smoked in my life. I thought it would kill me, right? I thought every drug would kill me, but if it was legal, obviously it was okay. So I brought the salvia over. I'm like, hey, we should do salvia in the office one night after we're done with all the stuff. And he goes, okay, sure, bring it over. He's like, it's legal, right? I'm like, yeah, no big deal. And he was a big weed smoker. And so we get the salvia, and as soon as he was done with the trip, he goes, fuck you, man. And I was like, what? He goes, that shit was so strong. He goes, you're trying to tell me that was going to be like weed or something? I was like, oh, I didn't even know. For me, every single time I do it, I get one epiphany, and it's the same one every single time. And it is that the salvia world that you get transported into. Remember, it's just one big hit, one big blowout, and you're on the trip for 10, 15 minutes. What happens is that I have the thought of the salvia world is the real world. And I can't stop laughing because I think this is the real world. And I am hysterical laughing the entire time to where I'm crying. I can barely speak afterwards because of the laughter. And the laughter is, this world's a joke. The salvia world is actually what the real thing looks like. And this is just some sort of dream bullshit. And so I always have that same message, and it always makes me go, maybe I don't want to do salvia for a while, because the salvia world's a little bit weird. You know, it's a little bit, it's like you're going around a corner, but there's never a full corner. It's just, you're constantly going around a wall that curves.
Well, if you think about energy not being able to be destroyed, it's always transforming and transmuting. And that's what's happening on a salvia trip.
Crazy.
Constant transmutation of energy.
I'm blown away. Sorry. I'm so blown away to hear you guys like it. First of all, it's terrifying.
You're terrifying.
Face your fears. Face the dragon.
It's terrifying. It's fucking terrifying. But it's different when you mix it with 5-MeO. It's this beautiful opening. It just adds more shapes and more colors. But wow, I watched a guy take a huge bong load of salvia on a YouTube video. Like, he took a gigantic heroic dose.
Ran out the window.
Flipped out. Yeah, it's really intense.
Really intense.
Yeah, good for you though. That's amazing. But I can see why your friend, coworker, was pretty upset, because that was
yeah. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm like, can I give you a hug? Like, I don't know.
He was swimming on the desk like a swan. He was fine.
Okay.
All right. I'd love to. I mean, again, like Chris said, I think we could talk for hours. I want to talk about the physical health, all the things. Maybe we need to hit up part 2. But to end our podcast, I'd love to just ask, what does living an elevated life mean to you?
In order to be elevated, we must surrender and totally just allow. It's our resistance that creates all of the pain and breakdown and struggle in our life. And we just get so caught up on our intellect instead of surrendering to our spirit. And these plant medicines and things like it can remind you that that's the real life. Like you said, I agree completely. After I did 5-MeO, I thought, I'm not sure I want to be here. I was still 1 foot in the afterlife. And I was like, that feels more exciting and appealing. I don't know if I want to be here. And for a couple months, I was threading the line of those two worlds. And there was some real integration that needed to happen. But surrendering into something bigger than us, whatever it is for you, that will elevate you. Your intellect is a wonderful, wonderful servant, but a horrible master, to paraphrase Einstein.
Mm-hmm. No. I love that so much. That's such a beautiful thought, because, when you think about doing more, you think you need to do more, but actually in doing less, you can create the space for more. So I love that message. Thank you so much, Brad, for sharing your wisdom, your love, your light, and your experience through this journey. And we're so grateful to shine a light on you. And we hope to have you back here on the podcast. We hope to see you in Mexico doing all the things. And we hope to hear your podcast season 2 start back up. We know the level of commitment, but that message definitely wants to be heard. So thank you so much for shining your light and sharing your gifts with the world.
Yeah, big thank you.
It was really, really fun. I'm very honored to be with you guys. So thanks.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you so much. All right. Until then, we will catch you guys next week.
Peace.